Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of Day 4 with the man Frank Scalish. If you listened to yesterday's regularly scheduled BTL programming on Wednesday, you noticed that Frank was in studio. And boy, has it been a morning, Frank.
It has been a lot crazier than I thought it was going to be.
It was. So, really cool show we got lined up for today. Actually, we are fresh out of a meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is why we're a couple minutes late there. But I wanted to go live. So one of the things we've kind of been teasing this year is some new additions to Day 4 with Frank Scalish. And that's what we kind of had our meeting on this morning.
Right. We're working out some things to bring you guys some really interactive. I don't even know how to describe it, man.
So you're big on maps.
Totally.
Oh, remind me, that map that you drew, I still haven't put it up on the wall because I haven't had you sign it yet.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that one with all the different you have to sign it, and because that's going up on the wall. We've got all sorts of stuff in the studio, and then we have to catch a fish this week because we need a grip and grin with both of us that's going next to it. So so that's what we were working on. Basically, well, I mean, there's no like cat to let out of the bag. We're working with Deep Dive.
You're right, the Deep Dive app.
And they have a really cool integrated app. You know, they've been a part of the regular BTL show for the past 3 or 4 years. You've seen a lot of kind of some map work that's been going on with it, but there's some technology available. Basically, Frank is going to become the John Madden of bass fishing.
Yeah, so it's going to give me the ability to actually physically draw on, change, explain live while we go. There'll be no more of, well, there might still be some picking up a map and showing a map, but for the most part, there's so many cool things in this app that it's so relevant to what we do as anglers that I really can't believe it. I mean, there's things in there. The coolest thing is like when I steelhead fish, the first thing I do is I go and I get a CFS, a cubic feet per second chart to see which rivers are running, high and dirty, low and clear. This app gives us the ability to dive into so many facets of what we do as anglers, and it could literally save you hours of time running around the lake. Go ahead.
It's cool. We would have been like perfectly on time for the show, but this also involves like multiple programs, screen mirroring, all sorts of stuff. So we're working out the kinks on it. So within
2 weeks.
Well, we'll just say this. So Frank has never had an iPhone before.
No.
So we went through the joys of an iPad, the screen mirroring, the apps, the programs. Yeah.
There's a learning curve for this old man. But we're going to get it.
It's very cool. It's cool to watch how open you are to learning. Like you could well be past the stage of learning new things. And I understand all good anglers learn new things every single day they're on the water.
You have to, or you don't
But
grow.
Let's be honest. There's a whole lot of people, and I'm even one of them, who you reach a point in your life where you say, this is what I know, this is how I do it, and this is how I'm always going to do it.
And I'm never changing.
Right. But it's awesome. And the more and more we spend time together and I get to know you and see you, how excited you get on having an open mind to say, whether it's a fishing technique, whether it's a style, whether it's a bait, whether it's technology, on how you go, oh my gosh, and then you rely on your experience, but you're open to learning new things, which I think is key to growing not only as an angler, but also as a person.
Well, yeah, the coolest thing. Okay, so, all right, this is actually really good. Okay, so one of the coolest and most fun things for me when I'm fishing is a new body of water. Because the whole process starts over again. Got to break it down, figure out the nuances of the lake, find the fish. It's all brand new. It's all exciting. So diving into some new technologies and everything else is like that new lake, so to speak, because I'm not really a tournament angler anymore. like I spend most of my time fishing, filming, designing lures, and doing Best Talk Live.
I'm living the dream, Frank.
Right, 100%. And so when I can add something else to my arsenal fishing wise, I kind of latch onto it, because with the advent of new technologies, aka live scope, et cetera, there's new doors, new opportunities that open, which makes lakes that I'm ultimately familiar with almost like a new body of water, because now I get to do something on that lake that I've never done before. And so that's what, like, the deep dive app, live scope, that's what all this stuff is doing. So now I'm taking waters that I'm probably intimately familiar with,
mm-hmm.
and approaching them in a brand new way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a new body of water to me. Last night, Matt and I were talking. We had to make a road trip. Matt had to pick up some lures, and we had to make a road trip. And so we were talking, and he was telling me what he was doing, and the bell went off in my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got 3 lakes at home. This is going to be a game changer, because A, nobody's doing it, and B, it's got the right quality of fish
mm-hmm.
for it. And so that's exciting to me, because that's like a brand new lake now. Even though I know it, it's like a brand new lake.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I get amped up when we do this stuff. And the technology part of it for me is very frustrating. And if you ever talk to my son Frank, he'll tell you my patience is about 3, 2, 1. I'm throwing it in the freaking lake.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you've been super good with me.
Well, because I'm trying to learn it and grasp it.
Is that why you get a hotel room instead of staying in the spare bedroom here, so you can go back and punch the hotel walls at night?
Yeah. No, those days are over. I'm not in college anymore, bro. Those days are over.
Frank goes, I said, dude, I got a whole spare bedroom set up, everything. This was 2 years ago. And Frank goes, I'm a man of routine. I will stay at a hotel. I will do the same thing every morning. I will not bother you, and you will not bother me. And I said, okay, be at the house at 7 a.m.
Exactly. Although after dinner last night, I really wanted to crash here, because I was like, holy crap. We had the best food last night. I didn't, Matt will tell you on the show a lot of times that he cooks food, but I'm just going to tell you the dude's straight up.
I'll pay you after the show.
Yeah. You owe me money. So we had Chilean sea bass. We had, how did you do the steaks?
Well, they were just smoked and then sous vide,
and
then seared and then thin sliced,
and then we had seared ahi tuna
with the wasabi.
That was
really good. That's the cheapest, easiest dinner. That was $17 for 4 pieces of that. You literally take it out, pepper it, sear it, thin slice it, squirt a little wasabi on the side.
Oh, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
it was great.
With Juice's famous crappie dip.
Yeah, we had Juice's smoked crappie dip, which was.
Yeah, we still have some of that.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, he gave me a big bowl of that.
So and then
well, we had
we had Mike Strawn's.
Yeah, we had the colossal prawns.
Oh, those prawns were big giant ones.
Yeah.
And so
we had the bacon wrapped Buc-ee's poppers.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was a disaster.
It was so basically we ate like pigs.
Yeah. It was good. Where were we going with that?
I don't know where the hell we were going with it. I'm lost.
Yeah. So Matthew Weimer says we will have a show next week. We just don't know if we're going to be integrating the new technology into the show next week.
Yeah, we'll have to see on that. It's going to depend upon my learning curve, to be honest with you.
I don't think there's much of a learning curve. You were whipping around that iPad.
Yeah, it's pretty similar to my graph.
Yeah. So anyway, Frank got back at like 11 last night from the hotel, and then we had this meeting set up at 7:15 this morning.
Right.
So then Frank got over here at 7, and we were doing the
loading up
the meeting until then, and then it's 8:29, and Frank goes, man, I need a muffin. I need a snack. I need a bagel, a piece of bread. And like Court's not here that often. right? Like just because she lives in Fort Worth,
Right.
I live up here in Shawnee. So my pantry is still stocked like a single man's pantry.
Oh, try and trust me, it is.
I had chips. That's the only corn based or wheat based.
Right, exactly.
So literally while you were watching that, Frank's in there stuffing his face with corn chips. My water is frozen in the back of the truck that I got from Costco 2 days ago. So we got a cup of water from the sink, and then we ran in and we did the show. But
true.
I titled it wrong. I said day 199 instead of 190. It's 190 for sure. I'll change that afterwards. But then I put major problems in parentheses.
Yeah.
So we scheduled this a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And weather's good. Weather's great. I was out 6 days ago when Frank's getting packed.
Oh, you were crushing on them.
And was catching fish. Have 6 lakes that we're going to, crappie and bass. We're going to do filming on them and everything. And then Frank leaves and he starts noticing something on his way from Cleveland, Ohio to Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Yeah, the farther south I drove, the more ice I saw, which I'm like, okay, that pond is frozen, but that's only a pond. Oh, that small lake is frozen. I'm getting closer and closer to Matt's house, and there's a river. I'm driving over a river. I go, oh yeah, the river will be open. River's frozen, and I got almost here, and I go, we're not going to have any open water.
Which never crossed my mind. It would have been the last time. I mean, it got cold 2 years ago for like a couple days, but it was surrounded by really nice weather. But 2021 was the last time that we had any semblance of ice on the water.
So last year I was here, right?
Yeah.
So
2 years ago.
2 years ago I was here, and we had great weather. We absolutely mashed on them. And then I remember that when I got home, it was like a week later, you took pictures, sent them to me, that everything was froze over.
Yeah. But it was just very brief.
Right. For like 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so now we're, we didn't do prep work. Okay. Cause if we did the prep work, we could have kept the smaller lakes open.
Well, I didn't know that there was prep work to do, which is kind of what we're going to talk about today.
Right. So because you don't experience this.
No.
But we do where I live every winter. So what I would do if I'm going to go somewhere, and you guys could attest to that, some of the posts I post on Instagram, like with the snow shovel, the cinder block, and the rope, and the push pole, et cetera, et cetera.
Didn't you just do a show about that? How you like loaded with your engine or something, and you had you were breaking ice.
Yeah. So I didn't do a show. I think I talked to you about it.
Oh.
But I know which lakes are going to freeze first, usually. And I know if we get light wind and cold weather and the lakes are calm at night, they're glassing overnight. So I'll prep work. If I go, okay, I'm going to be fishing in 2 days. I'll go out to a body of water and I'll start busting the ice. I'll clear the ramp. I'll bust the ice to get out. I'll drive around where I'm going to fish. If there's any skim ice on it, I drive all over it, crack it all up. And if the wind is my friend, it'll blow all the broken ice that I did to one corner, and I'll have an open section that I can utilize. Sometimes it works like a charm. Sometimes it doesn't. It's a crapshoot. But I can keep the water open a little bit longer. And so had we pre-planned for this weather.
We pre-planned. We just didn't pre-plan for this weather.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Had we pre-planned for this weather, we could have reconned for a day or two and broke enough water open where we would have easy fishing, really.
Yeah.
And so, so that's what's cool about geographical locations in our country. Because what we experience as being normal this time of year, down south, very abnormal. I mean, here, look at Louisiana. What did they get? 6 inches of snow?
Yeah.
Florida got snow.
I was seeing guys on the beach with 3 inches of snow.
Yeah. So Florida got snow on the beach. I think Destin got smoked. I was online this morning, and they were showing the ocean.
Yeah.
It's nice, calm, rolling in waves, the ocean, and then they pan down to the beach. There's like 5 inches of snow on the beach. So that's like completely unfamiliar territory for those guys.
I've got my days confused. Did we go look at the lakes yesterday after the show? Or did we go look at them the first day? Did we talk about that yesterday on the show?
We went to the bass tank yesterday.
Did we talk about that on the show yesterday?
Yeah, we talked about going to the lake yesterday.
So the plan, though, is you kind of understand how this works, and I think we've located 3 or 4 open bodies of water.
Yes.
So after the show today, we're going to put on the AFCO and the striker suits.
After I eat.
Yeah, we're going to go eat. I do want to make the spicy deer sausage gravy and biscuits and gravy one morning. I kind of got I'm behind on time for that, but yeah, there's a little diner down here that's phenomenal. We'll go grab a bite to eat, hook the cat up, and head to the pond afterwards.
I can't wait. We're gonna actually get an opportunity here.
But I'll be very interested to see, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday on the regular. I know we have a lot of day 4 listeners that don't listen to the regular shows. We had Charlie Hartley on the first section yesterday that he talked about the Bassmaster Open. They're facing some brutal conditions there on Clarks Hill. They actually postponed the first day of competition, which I
knew
think
they would.
Smart move for Bassmaster. It looks like they'll be about 10 degrees warmer tomorrow when they take off for a 2-day event.
And on that tournament, the problem really wasn't that it was the problem wasn't really the weather. The problem was the road conditions were horrid because they had froze over. So those guys are driving on just sheets of ice down there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the issue is. They can't get to the ramp safely.
Yeah. So we're going to alter our game plans a little bit. And Frank has some super secret stuff that he showed me. Like I said, there was some stuff where he's like, I don't want to show anyone else that, but I'm interested to see on those finicky, super cold water bass and crappie, if we can get those to take a bait.
Yeah, I think this is going to be. I think we got something.
I think we're working on it.
Yeah, I think we got something.
We talked about it a little bit yesterday. Just go over a couple of the safety things that you like to do in cold weather. Again, I don't think you can stress on this enough because it is a great time to get out. It's also a dangerous time to get out if you don't take the proper precautions.
Yeah, this time of year, fishing in the wintertime up where I live, it's no joke. Hypothermia can get you in about 4 minutes. If you fall in the lake, it's less time than that. The problem is that if you're not wearing the proper winter gear, you are protected even less from hypothermia.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of great gear out there that you can get. I use a striker float suit because I ice fished a lot. So I wanted it for ice fishing. It turns out it was insanely perfect for, fishing out of the bass boat. But what you should do is you should have a towel and a change of clothes in the boat. And I would even forego saying a change of clothes. I would say just throw like a snowmobile suit in there, because one winter I was fishing a hot water discharge with a buddy of mine, and he caught one, and I went to the gunnel to land it, and he got excited about the fish, and he stepped to the side of the boat, and the boat just pitched a tiny bit. But because it was winter, I slipped off the gunnel and went in, and the current was super strong. I reached up, I grabbed the side of the boat, which at the time I didn't realize was a no-no. The current sucked me underneath the boat.
Oh, you're on the opposite side.
I was on the up current side, sucked me underneath the boat. He ran to the other side of the boat and grabbed me by the back of the collar as I came up the other side. I will tell you this flat out, and I was a young dude back then. I mean, I like strength, stamina, not an issue. That snowmobile suit that I was wearing sunk me like a brick. I mean, like I was going down, and no matter how hard I swam, I was not coming up. So that's part of the reason that I gravitate towards the float suit. But here I had an extra snowmobile suit in the boat. I got in the boat. I took everything I had on off, and I climbed into the snowmobile suit, and we fished for another 6 hours. But if I didn't have that, I would have been so screwed, because to get from where we were to the boat ramp was a half an hour. And so I would have never made it back. I would have had hypothermia in about 4 minutes, and that would have been that. So it's very important, especially if you fish alone. Matt, your technique is really a good one with the rope. You tie a rope off. If you're by yourself, tie a rope off the back cleat.
Keep it on the back deck.
Keep it on the back deck about 4 feet down the rope. Tie a big loop knot with a big loop in it. So if you go in, you can get to the rope, and then you can put your foot in the loop and help prop yourself up on the boat. The other trick is I use the outboard trim. I'll straddle the outboard motor and manually, push the button on the side, trim the motor.
And that'll lift you.
Oh, it lifts you.
Okay.
Yeah, because think about it. You got your 250 pushing your 1,800-pound bass boat, and you're trimming up while you're running.
Mm-hmm.
It's easily going to lift you.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
And so those are some of the precautions to take. If you can help it at all, don't fish alone. That's the biggest thing, is don't be alone. And that's really pretty much it. And of course, don't be stupid,
All right. You've been coming out with a lot of badass colors lately, Frank. Not only on your monthly limited run of 600 color drops that drop every month, and there's been a variety of different colors in that, but also with the recent release of the Pro Rogue FX series.
Oh yeah,
that have a number of different. So this is where I want to go with this show, and we've done a lot of shows about color. So we've done a lot of shows about crayfish. We've done a lot of shows about shad. I want to marry these two together. This is something that I struggle with when it comes to winter and early spring fishing, Frank, is you always hear crayfish, crayfish, crayfish in the spring. You go back to the old wiggle warts, the shad wraps, the speed ends, all that, and it's always crayfish. But you have all of the jerkbaits and stuff that are shad colored. You have the shad. How do you determine between a shad and a crayfish color in the cold water? And then I want to go a step further with the shad patterns. But when are you determining, hey, I want to throw a shad pattern, I want to throw a crayfish pattern? Because I get on like Grand Lake and I'm like, okay, well, they're shad eaters, but all the crankbaits are crawfish. Like, is there a differentiate to where where you're better off going with those reds and oranges and bold colors, or a natural pattern in a shad?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I tend to do is I pay attention to the bass behavior. Especially watercolor is important too, because if the watercolor is, especially above the Mason-Dixon, like here, I will say this, okay? There are some of the lakes that we go to down here that are filthy. They're dirty as could be, but you're like, oh yeah, it's always like that. and so I'm like, holy smokes, man, that is like, I wouldn't even have stopped here. I would have passed by and went and looked for another lake. So you have to take into account the body of water that you're fishing. So crayfish versus shad, suspending bait versus crankbait. When the bass, in the cold weather, especially in the spring, there's a point in time where the bass, they're on shad, they're suspending, they're feeding up. And we're still talking cold water, because I've done this in 39 degree water.
Yeah, give us a little range of water temps.
So I'm talking 39 degrees to 45 degree water temperature. There's a certain point in time where your jerkbait bite is slowing down. You're still catching a few, but it's slowing down. That's when I gravitate to 45 degree banks, rocky banks, not so much the points yet as the 45-degree stuff. That's when I'm picking up the crankbaits, the middle end, deep little end, a wiggle wart, et cetera, et cetera. That's when I'm throwing those baits. And the whole key with those baits is you're not casting perpendicular, you're casting at a 45-degree angle or even a 60, and you're slowly walking the bait down so you can feel it crawling over all the rocks, banging off the boulders. And it's not, I'm not hard fishing it. Like I'm not summertime burning it. I'm literally just walking it. And that's when those baits become insanely effective. You're going to experience ice out this week here because all your ice is going to leave the lake. In where I live in the spring, the ice will start to melt off the lakes. I'm still on the jerk baits, 100% still on the jerk baits, because the bass are still suspending. They're still shaddy, but the crazy thing is they're already moving towards the areas that they want to spawn. And when you have a winter where it freezes fast, all these time frames happen faster. You'll have the lakes will be frozen, and then they're going to thaw out, and the bass are already going to be in the area that they want to be to spawn. So I'm going to target areas in front of all the spawning flats or in front of spawning coves. And that's how I break it down. And so I'll stay on the rogue, but you still have to have the crankbait out, because there's going to be times where you're going to have a channel swing that comes in the bank, and the bass that want to relate to the steeper breaks, they're going to be there already. There's going to be bass coming, and there's going to be bass.
But are you throwing a bait fish colored crankbait then, or are you throwing, when you're crawling it, are you just always going to go with the crawfish pattern and then the bait fish on the jerk bait colors? Like that's where I'm saying, because you look at some of these crank, you can get any shad pattern, but you also get the crawfish color. I
generally will stay with the reds early on.
Okay.
On the crankbaits, I want them rooting around the bottom. The bass are digging red. And here's the funny thing about red, because we had this conversation yesterday in the tackle shop. Here's the crazy thing about red. Everybody thinks that, it's spring, you got to throw red. The water's cold. It's, 45 degrees. You got to throw red. It's spring. You got to throw red. The red baits work the same in the fall. As you have a decreasing water temperature, the reds start to play again. It's just people don't associate that with fall fishing, because in fall, generally speaking, shad are migrating, bass are following the shad, blah, blah, blah. But the red still works in the fall. I would say in the fall is when I'm going to have crankbaits, shaddy crankbaits, and crawdaddy crankbaits. In the spring, I'm going to totally start out with the crayfish if I'm banging the bank with it. If I'm offshore with it, I'm going to go shad.
Okay.
And that's that. I mean, it's that easy.
So that leads to my next question. So the shad, the jerk baits, you have the flash point that's out. You've got these rogues. You have a number. You're big on, what do you call them? Pearlescence? What do you?
Right. Because the whole effect series was designed with layering of pearls. I have very limited color on the FX series. So I layered the pearls on it. It gives it it's translucent in certain watercolors, and it looks solid in other watercolors. That was the beauty of the FX series. So it's because each color in the FX series will look different in different watercolors. And so they're very chameleon-like. That was the coolest thing about the FX series. And so, of course, naturally, it went into the jerkbait line, the rogues. It was really good for that. I think we're putting some of them in some crankbaits coming down the road, because I need them in the crankbaits. And that was the whole theory behind that.
So
design.
When you mentioned, so you've got the so I wrote three words down here, which is I have translucent, bone, and pearl.
Yeah.
So within that, there are different hues of that. Now you talked about how that's a little bit of chameleon on that, but is water clarity going to dictate whether you're going to go with like a bright bone that's, I mean, you look at it, you put it up in the sun and you can't see through it, whether you have one that you can kind of see? Is that strictly on water clarity on how you're going to determine which?
Yeah. Here's my rule of thumb. If the clearer the water, the more transparent the bait. So if I pick the bait up and I can see through it, that's going to be my water color for if I can see 3 feet to 5 or 6 or more feet down. I'm picking more translucent bait, more transparent. And if the dirtier the water is, the more solid I go. Like some of the watercolor that we saw the other day driving around checking the lakes out, I would literally go bone and chartreuse easily, bone and white easily, black and white. The contrast, bass can see contrast very well. So the black and white contrast super good, very visible in off colored water. The thing that I found out is everybody's like, oh, the water's filthy, we got to throw chartreuse. Well, yes, you can throw chartreuse, but I have found that a bright white actually shows up in dirty water better than chartreuse. But
say that again. A bright white shows up better in dirty water than chartreuse.
Correct. But a bass doesn't see chartreuse like you and I will. They see it as a white. So we see it as, and it's a vibrant white. It's like a hot white. And so that's how a bass sees it. But in the dirty water, a white bait or a bone bait will reflect the light differently than a chartreuse bait. And so these are things that over the course of time, fishing around the country, just stuff that I've experienced. The other thing that was cool, you were talking last night when Mike was here from the tackle shop and Juice was here. You were telling me a story about you were throwing a chartreuse and black trap.
Yes.
And that was the color.
Yeah.
That was the color. Okay. I have seen so many times where bass want a color. And if you're not throwing that color, you don't catch them. I mean, the guy you were fishing with, he was throwing
chrome and blue.
Okay. Tell the story.
We were in Mexico and we were on a flat. And
what was the water clarity?
It was fairly clear. It was very clear. It was probably 4.5, 5 feet. And for some reason, they love chartreuse on El Salto. But it was one of those deals where I thought I had more of them. I only had 2.
Of course.
I broke one off right off the hopper, so I only had the 1. We're on the flat. We're both casted, and I catch 8 or 9, and he catches 1. And it's clearly a color deal because we have the exact same bait on the exact same setup on the exact same deal. And I cast off the trap. Like I cast it and it goes like into the Mexican mountains. And I just sat down and I'm like, I'm cooked.
Yeah,
I'm toast. And we tied on different colors and it went from I was catching them every other cast, not enormous fish, 2.5 to 4 pounders, to 1 every 10 casts. And it was the weirdest color thing that I had ever seen.
Yeah. So you were throwing chartreuse and black.
Yeah.
Insanely contrasting.
Yeah. In cleaner water.
Bright white to black is what that bass saw.
Okay.
All right. And so it was insanely contrasting, where if you're throwing a chrome and blue, it's a chromy blue flash, very little contrast. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's a big bright flash. And so with the cleaner water, the chartreuse was a duller. There was basically not a lot of flash to it, but the bass saw it as bright white and black. So they were keying in on it because it's better bait fishing.
Okay. So let's just go down this wormhole then.
All right. We're doing it.
You saw my rogue box.
Oh yeah.
A lot of chrome in there.
Yes.
Rogues have been known for chrome. When are you going with a chrome, blue chrome, orange chrome? Like, when does chrome fit into the jerkbait category as opposed to
more
white or
natural.
translucent or more natural color?
What I have found is that blueback chrome orange belly has a tendency to produce really well into the sunlight in sunny conditions. It produces really well for some reason.
Just because of the flash?
I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess because I have never asked a bass. So I got to guess.
So if you're going and you know it's a jerkbait bite, but it's going to be high sun, bluebird skies, you're going to make sure you have something that has some flash in it, that chrome kind of color to it, as opposed to a more translucent color.
Right. Or one of the FX colors in oil blue or oil green, because what those baits are is it's a transparent foil underlay underneath the paint. So I'm getting
what color?
Oil green or oil blue.
Okay, here's oil blue.
So I'm getting a subtle flash. Like if I know they're preferred the chrome blue, the chrome blue, then oil blue would be my choice. And here's why. Because it's still going to flash for you. It's a little subtler. It's semi-transparent.
Best of both worlds.
You get the best of everything. And if I'm fishing around a lot of people, my bait will be more subtle, less flashy, more apt to catch fish behind guys. And so that's the other thing, because if you think about it, if you go to a farm pond and you go to this farm pond and you walk around it, and let's say you throw a rattle trap around it, you smoke their brains out the first time you go. Let's say you go back 3 days later and you're like, oh, I know they eat that trap. I'm going back to the pond with the rattle trap. You go back down there, you start throwing that trap around, and you catch a few. And by the third time you go there, they won't even touch it because they get accustomed to the vibration, the noise, and the way it looks. And they get accustomed to it and know that it's not an edible thing, and they turn off to it. However, you go to the farm pond, you're throwing a 5-inch yum dinger, and you smash them day in and day out on it. And the reason being is because it's such a natural presentation. If they turned off to it, they would starve to death. And so that's why a lot of these natural looking jerkbaits don't lose their fish appeal, because the bass can't, they have to go after them because they're so representative of food. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It does. I'm showing that flash point down there in a blue is a little bit of underwater on that. All right. So then let's go one step further. And I know that you've designed a lot of walleye colors that are just obnoxious.
They're always obnoxious.
But when it comes to the bass fishing, the clowns, the really bright colors, there's some that you see pinks and all sorts of weird colors. Now take the smallmouth out of the equation for.
Do we have to?
Yeah, because I want to talk about like what's going on across like this big swath there. We've done shows on that. Is there ever a time when you're going with a clown with something like that for largemouth in this time where you're not doing the whites or normals where you're not doing a foil where you're going, okay, I want bold primary contrasting colors on my jerkbait?
Yeah, clown's a unique color. When back a billion years ago, when I was introduced to clown, it registered to me as a smallmouth color, and I caught a lot of smallmouth on it, tons of them actually, and I caught a lot of largemouth on it, and I always thought it was just by accident that I ran it by one and I triggered a bite. But I found that the clown catches the largemouth as well as it catches smallmouth. And I couldn't put my finger on it really, what the deal was. So the only thing that I could think of was that color scheme was so out of the ordinary, the bait stood out.
Okay.
And they can see it farther. And that was the only thing I could surmise by that, because I don't know what the bass think, you know what I mean? So So I wasn't really sure, but it worked. And I don't have a place where I can tell you under these conditions, I'll throw clown. I just don't. It's just.
Because that happens at Grand a lot. I mean, Cliff Pace, when he won the Classic in 2013, mixed in a clown colored jerk bait as well. And it seems like seems like a lot of the old school guys will have just a tattered up clown jerk bait in their box that they're not really keen to talk about.
Right. Just scrape to beat the band.
Yeah.
My rule of thumb is I always have natural shad patterns and I have a hot shad pattern. Hot shad pattern being clown, being, some form of chartreuse. Because there are times when you can make a bass bite it. And if I know I'm around bass and I'm throwing natural colors and I'm catching a lot of them, as that bite slows down, then I switch to the hot pattern and I might go right through that area one more time with the hot color and pick up fish that I didn't catch on the natural shad patterns. Mm-hmm. I do that with my crankbaits too. I always have natural colored crankbaits on, and then I have a hot pattern, be it citrus, chartreuse, and blue, whatever. But I always make sure that I have at least one hot pattern while I'm cranking, because I can go over an area with a natural pattern, catch fish, stop catching fish, go back through with the hot pattern and pick up a few more residual fish. And so, there's tricks like that. So, like the Carolina rig is a go-to of mine after I'm done cranking a rock point, ledge, or whatever. And I stop getting bit on the crankbait. I go through with the Carolina rig and I pick up fish that I didn't catch with the crankbait. So, in the cast for cash game, you want to get as many bites as you can get. You want to get as many bites as you can get. And I learned that by tournament fishing, that if there's fish there, and KVD told me this, you are not going to catch every one of them. So with that in mind, I said, well, there's got to be a way to catch more of them then. And that's how I incorporated the naturals with the hot, the Carolina rig with the big crankbaits, the football jig, et cetera, because it's a different look on the same structural element where you can pick up a bite or two. And that's what you're doing when you're off the main pattern, when you deviate from, I was catching them on these jerkbaits, or I was catching them on these deep diving crankbaits. That's your main pattern. But when that slows down on a spot, you have to think, there's no way I caught them all. Mm-hmm. I got to go back through there with a different bait. And then you pick up, you may not blast them. You may pick up one or two extra ones. Joe and I were filming a video deep cranking, and I was catching them pretty good, actually. And I was running the crankbait in the water, saw the fish flash on it. I caught him. He took it right at the side of the boat. We were laughing because I was just catching them like crazy. And I said, you want to know something? You want to see something nuts? He's like, what's that? I said, let's wear them out. Let's just wear them out. So we sat there and I gave him a crankbait. I took one, and we both just plastered them. We could barely get a bite anymore. I said, now I'm going to show you something stupid. He's like, what's that? I go, we're going to go back and fish that with a Carolina rig. And unbelievable. We plowed him on the Carolina rig. And he's like, we could barely catch another fish throwing the crankbaits. And I said, I know, because we were catching the fish that were active and wanted that crankbait. Now we're going through there and catching the ones that weren't, in the mood for the crankbait. And it was unbelievable. Same spot. We didn't go to a different spot. We stayed on the same ledge and did that. So it was crazy.
All right, two more colors, and I think we've covered the gamut.
Okay.
Would you put a Fire Tiger jerkbait in the same category as a clown jerkbait?
I put the Fire Tiger color. I'll throw Fire Tiger in gin clear water for whatever the reason. That bait, think about it. Fire Tiger is a black back, lime shoulders, chartreuse sides, orange belly, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know chartreuse is bright white to a bass.
Okay.
So the lime is a duller white, and the black is black. So that bait has actually a kind of a natural look to it in the water, because to a bass, he's seeing black, gray, and white. The pattern on the side is black. So now he's got contrast. Those black, marbling on the sides now breaks up. So it's got a bright white with black spots, very contrasty. Bass can see it because
looks like a beat up gizzard shad.
100%. Back in the day, I didn't understand how I could catch them in clear water on a fire tiger. Like, it blew my mind. I thought that was an off color dirty water bait. I caught so many bass fishing it in clean water. That was like my hot pattern that was always tied on. But
that being said, I mean, I've seen your jerkbait boxes. It's not loaded with fire tiger.
No, jerkbaits are a different animal.
Why isn't it loaded with why are fire tiger jerkbaits? I mean, the only like real fire tiger, and I know there's some in there, is that the old thunder stick. Remember they had they had a real vibrant fire tiger pattern in a thunder stick. The only problem was you jerk it and do a semicircle up to the surface, and then they were like, "Hey, we'll give these dots you could stick on the bottom so it doesn't roll."
It straightens out. The crazy thing is like, so when you saw my jerkbait box last night, I took them out.
There's no fire tiger in there.
No, but there's clown.
Okay.
There's bone and chartreuse.
Yep.
There's purple and chartreuse.
Yeah.
So I have
all elements of fire tiger.
Right. I have my hot colors in there, but here, listen, all my chartreuse on those baits is on the belly, because the bass on a jerkbait are looking up. They're feeding up,
which looks white.
So
looks like a gut bag.
100%. So I want them to see the target, because I know they're from the bottom looking up. And so that's why I do that. I never, honestly,
you're just throwing prettier fire tigers.
I've never thrown
more advanced fire tigers.
Yeah, pretty much. But I've never thrown the fire tiger color in a jerkbait in my life.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That might be.
I mean, it could be. Yeah, I mean, it could be a missing link on a tough day.
You know a guy who can paint some baits, don't you?
Yeah, I think I heard of someone.
You can't see the instant feedback here. We got over 250 people watching live. It lit up when we started talking about fire tiger. Yeah, and there were guys that were asking about it before.
Oh yeah, it's and the crazy enough thing is, I like the matte fire tiger better than the gloss clear coated one.
Yeah, so like what came on the deep flat A?
They had a matte finish there. They had a matte finish fire tiger on the.
It's just not shiny.
Yeah, it's not shiny. They had the matte fire tiger on the bombers for sure, because that was one of my mainstays. And I believe they had.
I just pulled it out.
They had the matte finish on the Rebel Deep Wee Craw, which is the D76 model, I believe. And I just introduced a series of matte crayfish colors in that Rebel Craw, and Fire Tiger's one of them. So I can't see what you're doing there, but if you go to Rebel, pull up the Deep Wee Craw, D76 matte Fire Tiger. It's my version of it. I really sexied the thing up a lot.
Rebel Deep Wee
Craw.
Yep. In the
matte series.
Oh, yeah, we pulled those up.
Yeah.
There's like 90 versions of this Wee Craw on here.
Yeah, it's the deep. It's a D76. It's a deep version.
I'll just type in D76.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to come up or not.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, so what I did with
what color?
It should be Fire Tiger. You'll recognize it. I don't know what the name of it is.
Oh, those aren't the matte version. Anyway, those are just the deep we are. I remember you showed those like a couple shows ago.
Yeah, they're in there for sure. I guarantee it.
No.
I just bought a bunch of them before I came down.
I know. You're the sole reason why these things that haven't sold since 96 made a big comeback. Dude, I tell you, that used to be my jam.
Same here.
In Canada, I'd always stop and get the Rebel. the Rebel Craw, and I knew I was headed to Smallmouthville.
Well, the Matt series colors in that bait, I got a box full of them now because because that used to be one of my go-tos. And I'm kind of partial to the colors since I made them.
Yeah. I'm trying to turn it up here. Oh, Matt series, Rebel Craw.
There you go.
Well, I just typed it in. I didn't see it. Last one then. Red. In a jerkbait.
Red?
Yes.
Okay.
Like red in a jerkbait.
Okay.
There are guys who swear by red jerkbaits. I'm talking about that deep red. Like the Rogue had a color that was like almost a translucent red.
Yeah. So the closest I came to that was I used blade dye and I dyed one of my black and chromes red. For Gunnersville. And that's the closest I came to actually turning it into a mainstay in my box. Because they were smoking it. Absolutely smoking it. It's not a mainstay for me, but I would not ignore it.
Okay. It feels like a lake specific thing. Like I can think of a couple lakes in Oklahoma where the guys are like, it's a deeper or dark red jerkbait, and they pull it out just for those lakes.
I think that's true.
What makes specific lakes like have a color that, like Texoma's big on that, Eufaula's big on that? What makes a lake have like a specific odd color that they go nuts for it on that, but it's on even surrounding lakes?
I'm not 100% sure about that. I used to think it was predicated on the watercolor of the lake. But there was an old Shad Rap color that my buddy Troy and I used to fish all the time, and literally would just beat the brakes off the fish on them. And I said, well, God, if that thing works that good here, it's got to crush them where I live. And I would catch some fish on it, but oddly enough, where I live, they wanted the real shad one. Not even the black and foil one. They wanted that real shad color they made.
And you could both be throwing two different colors, one to show a definite preference.
100%. But when we were in the Carolinas, because I did a lot of wintertime fishing over there, I don't know the color that they called it, but it was more like a brownish orange than a red. In fact, it wasn't really red. It was a brownish orange, maybe hot belly on it. If you weren't throwing that, you didn't catch them. I mean, you just didn't catch them. And then over the course of the years, I got away from that bait, and I started throwing the G Finish Big O.
Yep.
And massacred the spots on that thing. Massacred them on it. So I'm like, that's what I'm throwing when I go there, because it never lets me down. And so it's weird. And I don't know if if the bass got off the color, or I just didn't throw it as much. You know what I mean? And that has a lot to do with it too, I think.
Is the best way to experiment with colors when you're on a really good bite, or when you're not getting bit?
When you're on a bite. When you're on a bite. Because because now you're going to get a true sample size.
Okay.
All right. If you're struggling to get bit and you're catching one here and one there, you can't really determine if it's the color or not, because you don't have enough feedback. But when you're on them, that's the best thing to do, is say, okay, let me throw this color at them and see what.
Also, the hardest thing to do.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to put down a bait you're smoking them on, for sure. But that's the best time. That's, that when I experiment with a color a lot, I make sure I'm on them good.
Okay.
Because I want to get a true visual. And then oddly enough, I keep going back to live scope, but oddly enough, because with live scope, if you can see the fish, you could see their reaction, in a nanosecond that the color ain't right, because they'll look at it, run it, and then peel away from it. I learned that with crappie, because as you know, when I first started doing this, I just chased crappie on it for a year before I ever even bass fished with it. And I would dip down on the crappie. I'd see one come up and he wouldn't take it. He'd come up, he'd sit there and look at it. As soon as I changed the color and drop it down there, he'd smoke it. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, it's, color preference. And so that's when I started realizing that because I can see the fish's behavior, now I know that I got to change.
And if you don't have the scope, and you've talked about it, how a fish's hook determines how the bite is, you could do the same thing on that. If you're getting one that they're T-boning, that they're getting the front treble hook in, that they're headshotting, versus ones where you're just getting the tip of the hook in. So if you don't have scope, you can tell based on how that fish is taking up sample size of those fish on how aggressive and how committed they are to it.
Right. So I got a perfect example. So I was practicing on Pickwick. And I went up this creek arm on this big flat. There were stumps all over the flat. I brought a buddy of mine from home with me because he didn't get a chance to fish these lakes outside of our state. So I pulled up on this stump flat and I was throwing a Bomber Square A in Tennessee shad. It was my go-to color. It's a natural shad pattern, go-to color. I'm chucking it. I hit the first stump and I got one, and it was barely hooked by the back hook. I didn't think much of it at the time because I thought maybe he hit it as it ricocheted and rolled off the stump. It was a reaction. He slashed at it. I got him. 2 stumps later, I got another one. Same thing. Back treble hook, barely hooked. I get him in the boat. I look at my buddy. I go, you got to throw chartreuse and blue. I'm not throwing it. I don't like that color. I never throw that color. I go, no, you got to throw it because I have to see if they're going to choke on that one or if they're eating it better. He goes, no, I'm not throwing it. I said, here. And I gave him my Tennessee shad one, and I put the chartreuse and blue one on. And every bass I caught after that, they had that bait in their throat, like in their throat. And so that was a definite 100% color choice. And you could see the difference by how they were hooked, how they hit it. It didn't matter. They literally choked on it. And my buddy looks at me and he goes, I can't believe that. I hate that color. Now I got to buy it.
That's like Keith Combs has made a living on chartreuse blueback.
Oh, yeah, dude. Back in the day, that was my go-to crankbait color.
Well, I think we were watching one of the Elite series from like 2008 on TV, and almost everybody was starting chartreuse blue.
Yeah, chartreuse and blue or citrus.
I'm going to ask it one more question in regard to colors. I think we've really taken a deep dive into this.
Where are we going Saturday?
To Lucky Lure Tackle.
Lucky Lure Tackle. They just got a huge shipment in of the FX colors in the Rogues.
So if you're there, you can walk the guys through it.
Right. So if you guys show up there Saturday, I can walk you through all the colors and everything. But they got the full selection, which is great because with all the colors, you can narrow down ranges in the lakes that you fish, which is really good.
Sweet. Are you ready to go fishing?
Dude.
Well, you ready to get something to eat?
I have to eat. I'm sitting here like
I'm so bad about that. I apologize. No, that's 100% on me.
I'm terrible at it too, because we literally to get ready for what we're doing in the future. This meeting this morning was paramount.
Yeah, it was good stuff.
It was paramount. So. And we kind of stayed up a little late last night.
We have a to-do list because we have to cut some stuff. We have to go over your new clothing line. We have to go over classic expo times. We'll get all that stuff dialed in. Let's do it on the boat while we're freezing.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. This has been another edition of Day 4
with Frank SCALISH.
We got to work on that.
That's so funny.
We got to work on that. All right. Wish us luck. Open water. Stay tuned to Frank's Instagram and my Instagram. As long as we have service, we'll post some updates. And we'll talk to everybody later. See ya.